Time for a Tahoe hood story. Years ago, when I was going to buy my first handgun, I did a whole bunch of research, and I read a bunch of reviews, and I looked at all the guns that I could buy, and I decided to buy a Ruger SR9c. And I went to the Sportsman's Warehouse to buy an SR9c, and they didn't have one. This was during the sort of the post-Sandy Hook panic, so everything was sold out everywhere, all the time. They did not have an SR9c. They had an SR40c. Even as a brand new gun owner and an enthusiast of 40 Smith & Wesson, I still knew better than to buy that. But they did have a Glock 19 Gen 3. And I really wanted to get a handgun. Didn't want to wait for this to come in stock who knows when, so I just bought a Glock 19. Obviously, I backed the right conceptual horse. But all these years later, the SR9c has fallen in price to the point where you could buy a brand new one for about $200. I probably paid about $500 for my brand new Glock. And this would have been, I want to say, $350 to $375 to $400, probably back when I was still buying it. Now, what accounts for the drop in price? I think a big part of it is that Ruger has given the SR9c the E-Series treatment. Now, there is an E-Series economy version of the full-size SR9. It's called the 9E. And that has simpler slide milling, no front serrations, and then simpler serrations on the rear. It has, I believe, a simpler sight. Nixes the loaded chamber indicator. And, uses it's only available in black finish, and it has, a simpler logo. Not that that really means a whole lot. In a lot of ways, the 9E is the best version of the Ruger SR series because it's the full size, which is probably the best one. And it's got, it simplifies some things that you don't need anyway. Nixes the loaded chamber indicator, as far as I can remember anyway. And it's probably, for the price, the best one you can get. As for the regular SR9 and SR9c, you can still buy them. Probably they're still making them because they can sell them in California. And they've fallen in price quite a lot. But how do they get them cheaper? One thing is that they cheaped out on the slide finish. These used to be a much shinier stainless steel. Now they're a matte stainless. And this probably wears a lot better. The shiny stainless kind of has a problem where if you get scratches on it, it looks bad. And then if you have like a brushed stainless and it gets holster polish, it kind of looks bad. This matte stainless is going to wear pretty well. And, if it gets beat up, it's not really going to look bad or anything. They've also changed some parts of the design because there used to be a different style end plate here. And you can tell if there's a second little divot, a little smaller circle in the end plate, that's the older style. Although the more obvious thing is going to be that the finish is going to just be way shinier. So the problem with this gun really is that the 10-round mag is the one that makes the most sense. For a 10-round capacity gun, it's kind of a super chunk. Very ergonomic, and at least for me, the finger rest extension for the 10-round is just about perfect. Just about a perfect grip, although you could see that they could just go ahead and throw an extra round in there and make that magazine stick out a little bit more. Obviously, for concealment, having a longer front strap is not as big of a hindrance as having a longer back strap. So I can see why they did this, but honestly, I would like to have at least an 11-round or 12-round magazine that just stuck out a little bit more. I mean, that's just the size that would work for me. And then you've got the 17-round mag, and this is the mag from the full-size SR9 or 9E. It just comes with a sleeve on it. And the sleeve doesn't stay in place very well, so I wouldn't want to carry a spare with a sleeve on it unless I'd like super glued it in place or something like that. And you cannot run this thing like so. Your fingers are going to overhang, it's going to pinch. Yeah, that's just not good. So if you really want to use these 17-rounders, you got to use this crappy little spacer. I think that these really could have been the best pistols that Ruger ever made if they just trusted them a little bit more. I think if they trusted this design and they made basically an SR9 Pro, an SR9c Pro, ditch that manual safety, ditch that loaded chamber indicator, how about some factory night sights or fiber optic or, something like that. You know, it didn't need a whole lot to be a lot better. And these are still significantly more ergonomic than the Ruger American pistol, than the Security 9 series. They're much better looking, I think, than either of those pistols. So I think Ruger just abandoned this one a little bit too soon, to be honest with you. Kind of feel like if they had just had a second iteration of this, but really the only thing that changed in the design is that they simplified the end plate and they cheaped out on the slide finish on the stainless ones. That's it. That's the only attention that they gave to this thing. And it could have just been that they had some early teething issues that I know a lot of the SR9s and SR45s were not super reliable right out the gate. So that could have been it. Just start out bad publicity and then they just gave up on it. But this had the potential to be a real competitor for Ruger. And unfortunately right now they don't make a real competitor. You know, the American pistol sucks. They're probably not even making any more of those. They're probably just desperately trying to sell off the ones that they already made. And then the Security series is just sort of, they're cheap and they're not that nice. And you know, that's maybe more Ruger's market share. But they really, I think they should have just invested a little more in this.
Wow, Hop in the Woods sure knows how to leave out almost all the important details. Here's some stuff I didn't mention at the range. The SR9 is a much more advanced gun than the Security 9, and it's a much more attractive gun than the American pistol. Versus the Security 9, the SR series has better ergonomics and it has an ambidextrous safety and magazine release. The American pistol does have full ambi controls, but it's also very ugly and has terrible grip ergonomics. The Ruger SR9 series guns all have manual safeties and magazine disconnects. You can very easily remove the magazine disconnect while detail stripping the slide, and you should. Like with the magazine disconnect on the Ruger P345, if you dry fire the gun without a mag inserted, you can destroy your firing pin in short order. It's a bad feature, and the fact that it damages the gun just makes it worse. That is some unacceptable California bullshit, Ruger. I do not like the Security 9 or Ruger American pistols. If I was Ruger, I would resurrect the SR series with a Gen 2 variant that had the following changes. Number 1, no manual safety. It's got a trigger blade, so trust the trigger blade and ditch that manual safety lever. 2, no loaded chamber indicator. Do what Glock does and have a tactile nub on the extractor that serves as an indicator, or do a witness hole like Smith & Wesson. Saves time, saves money, makes for a better gun. Number 3, no magazine disconnect. Come on, those fucking suck, just don't do it. Number 4, replace the weird accessory rail with a normal section of 1913 rail. Easy upgrade. Glock is the only company that can still get away with those half-assed single-slot rails in current year. 5, better sights. The sights on the SR9 are not terrible, and they are easily adjustable for elevation and not that difficult to adjust for windage. The sights on this SR9c hit way high right out of the box, so that's kind of a pain in the ass, but at least I can correct for it. Again, I honestly prefer the non-adjustable 3-dot sights on the 9E, assuming they're on target. But if you want to make the SR9 Gen 2 a competitor, give it factory high-vis sights. I'm thinking tritium front post with an orange outline and U-notch serrated blacked-out rear sights. Think about it. Nothing else really needs improvement on the SR series. The triggers are pretty good on these guns, especially once broken in. I've heard people say they have bad triggers, but I think that's just based on dry fire. The trigger does have an over-travel problem. You can address that with an aftermarket trigger bar, but you don't necessarily have to. It's not as noticeable when shooting as when dry firing. All the same, if you can improve the trigger, you might as well. Here's the first 10 rounds I ever put through an SR series. This is the 9E at 10 yards. It's definitely shootable. Other than that, maybe offer a threaded barrel option. Ruger guns will never have the kind of aftermarket support of Glocks and SIGs, so Ruger has to be the one to provide stuff like that. This is a pipe dream, obviously. Ruger is happy with the Security 9 series, and they just released the Pro version of the Security 9 that has night sights and no manual safeties. But it still has a non-ambidextrous magazine release, and it still has the annoying disassembly that requires you to drop a tiny pin out of the gun. Anyway, that's just me complaining, I guess. The SR series might not be the best guns Ruger ever made, but they had the most potential. I think the Security series is completely tapped out, and the Ruger American pistol is all but abandoned already. Ruger is nobody's first choice in the tactical pistol market, and they probably never will be. But they could make the SR9 a contender. I don't think they can do that with the American pistol or the Security 9. Okay, see you later. Alright, so most Larabars, I'm not sure what the dots on the A mean. No, there's a different set of dots on each A. So, Larabar, maybe, I don't fucking know.
Anyway, almost all of them are just made out of cashews and dates. There's a bunch of different flavors, but it all comes down to cashews and dates. Except this, which is chocolate chip cookie dough. Instead of cashews, it's fucking apples and stuff in there. So, it's probably still got cashews. Of course it's got cashews, because it's a Larabar. It's pretty good, except there's one thing that you never see paired with apple, and that is chocolate. So if you made a fucking apple bar, why did you put chocolate chips in it? Just take the chocolate chips out and call it an apple bar. Don't be switching up the whole cashews and dates thing just because you put chocolate chips in there. That's fucking stupid. This is like very close to being the best version of the Larabar, and then it's still gross. Just like all the other ones.